What's up folks, Mike for CMCC Builds here with the third build in the Optimizing Critical Role series, Nott the Brave. Originally I was planning on doing a joint build video with both Sam and Liam because, come on, Sam and Liam, they gotta be together, right? But really it's because both of these characters are surprisingly well built, and to be completely honest, I was pretty surprised when looking over Nott's character sheets. Given the character and pre-Tasha's restraints put on the players, Sam made some very solid choices throughout Nott's progression. That said, there are still some tweaks and changes I'm going to make. In fact, for Caleb's video, we're going to do something quite a bit different and really lean into one of the Tasha's optional rules, which we'll go into in more detail when we get to Caleb. I'm really excited for that, as I've never seen a build lean into this optional feature, and I've definitely never seen it tie into a player's story like we're going to do. Be on the lookout for that. Once again, I wanted to thank all the new subscribers to the channel. I hope you've had a chance to check out some of the other things I do here, and a big thank you to my OG subscribers. The channel is less than 6 months old right now, and some of you have been here since the Luke build. You saw past the terrible sound and the mediocre editing and took a chance, and that's awesome. You're awesome. And even if you're not a subscriber, you're pretty cool too. Hopefully with this video I can earn your subscription. With that out of the way, let's crossbow bolts into the build. As always, we'll start with race, and with Nott, where do we begin? Obviously, major spoilers. Why are you watching this if you're trying to avoid spoilers? Nott is a goblin, but she's really the halfling Veth. Amazing storyline, I'm pretty sure everyone loves it. With Yasha and Ford, I simply took the race that the players chose and basically moved along. But here we need to spend a little time on this one. Sam chose for his character to be transformed from a halfling into a goblin, and he wanted to play a rogue in exactly the opposite way that Liam played Vax, where Vax was cool and slick and brave and badass. Nott would be shy and awkward and timid, even scared, with major character flaws. I freaking love this character. I love how she's scared of water and has an existential crisis when trying to figure out if she should dive into the water to help her friends or cower in fear. I love how she drinks constantly, causing her combat prowess to be weakened because of her drunkenness. That's how she manifests her fear and insecurity. And I also love how Sam made most of the right choices for a rogue build despite all those weaknesses. Except for race. Goblins don't make good rogues. They should make good rogues. The Goblin's best racial ability is just a slightly weaker version of the Rogue's cunning action, which makes the Goblin's racial ability completely redundant if you're playing a Rogue. Goblins make awesome wizards because of this. Wizards have a mostly free bonus action to use Nimble Escape and can hide from enemies for defensive and offensive purposes. If Sam wanted to pick a monstrous, small race that is archetypically fearful and potentially seen by others as weak, while also fitting well with the rogue class selection, the original Kobold, pre-Monsters of the Multiverse, is the clear pick. Nott would hide her face from others for fear of persecution and her own internal hatred of what she has become. Sunlight sensitivity would have fit this personality trait perfectly as a physical manifestation of an internal flaw. The grovel, cower, and beg feature would have been amazing on Nott, and Sam could RP the hell out of this feature. And finally, pack tactics is absolutely one of the best racial features in the game. It's so good that Wizards of the Coast decided to completely nerf the ability in Monsters of the Multiverse. And by nerf, I mean they completely got rid of the ability and pumped up the grovel feature into the new Draconic Cry. Pack tactics on a ranged rogue is really great. First, it guarantees you're getting sneak attack, because disadvantage will always be countered by the advantage, and an ally within 5 feet of the target triggers sneak attack. Second, advantage is great on rogues who absolutely need to hit every turn since they don't get extra attack and rely so heavily on that sneak attack damage. Third, nearly doubling your crit chance is awesome with all those sneak attack dice that double on a critical, but Sam picked the goblin instead, and visualizing Nott as a long-snouted kobold just doesn't seem right, so goblin it is. But I would have went with kobold. Sorry, Spurt. As far as ability scores, background, and equipment are concerned, I wouldn't change a thing. Arcane Trickster as the subclass is perfect from a story perspective, but it also happens to be one of the better rogue subclasses in the game because, you know, spells. Speaking of which, I would have liked to see Sleep on Nott's spell list along with Silvery Barbs, which of course didn't exist during Campaign 2. I could also see an argument for Nott to take Find Familiar instead of Featherfall as her spell from any school of magic. It would have made perfect sense for Caleb to have taught her the spell, and it would have made for some fun RP, as I can only imagine what Familiar Sam would have chosen. For cantrips, Minor Illusion works better than Message from both the character and power perspectives, but there were so many fun message moments that I can't bring myself to make this a hard suggestion. Crossbow Expert for the feat choice at level 4 is great. An extra attack on a rogue is so important. Just in case your first attack doesn't land, you double your chance to use your sneak attack. It does conflict with the rogues and goblins' bonus action features, but because most of the offensive power of the rogue comes from that single sneak attack damage landing, you can forego the second attack, assuming you hit on your first attack, and use that bonus action feature to hide or disengage without hurting too much from not having the second attack. At level 8, Sam takes a half feat to bump his dex to 20. Here, Sharpshooter, which Sam takes at level 10, is the way to go. With 2 attacks and a hand crossbow, Sharpshooter does a lot more here than for most rogues. Since rogues primarily want to land at least 1 attack per turn and usually only have 1 attack per turn, taking a -5 to your attack roll can be devastating. But with Crossbow Expert's bonus action attack, this becomes much easier to use. Hand crossbows also have very mediocre range at just 30 feet, so upping that to 120 feet makes maneuverability and positioning that much easier. Sam got a spell of any school at this level, but went with Phantasmal Force and Invisibility. Blur, Hold Person, Mirror Image, and Shadow Blade are all probably better picks than either of those spells. But Suggestion would have been a great pickup for Nott, especially as a counter to her terrible charisma-based skills like Persuasion and Intimidation. But for the pick from any school, you gotta go with Web here. One of, if not the best second level spell, and it's good at these higher levels. It's also one of those spells I'd love to see Sam play with. The joke potential is quite high on this one. Nott also gets the Arcane Trickster feature at level 9, Magical Ambush. It's a feature that Sam did use, but just not enough in my opinion. He should have been bonus action hiding and casting spells like Hold Person or Suggestion or anything with a big impact like that. Of course he didn't have those spells, which is why it's so important to choose your spells carefully. Next level, Nott gets another cantrip, and here take Minor Illusion instead of Shape Water. Shape Water is actually a great cantrip with a ton of interesting uses, but for me Minor Illusion just fits Nott better, and it potentially has a bit more utility and combat applicability than Shape Water. At 10, Nott gets another feat. A half feat is a good idea since we didn't take it at 8. Fortunately, Tasha's added some great half feats. Piercer is a decent option, which will add a couple of points of damage per turn. This works really well when you roll a lot of damage dice like rogues do, because the chances of turning a 1 to a 3.5 on average grows quite a bit with each additional die rolled. Sticking with Rogue for one more level gets Reliable Talent, which allows any ability check that adds your proficiency bonus to be treated as a 10 at the lowest. 55% of the time this ability is completely useless, and 45% of the time it adds between +1 to +9 to your roll. How good is that exactly? Well, that entirely depends on the amount of mid-level DC skill checks your DM is throwing your way in Tier 3 and 4. Low DCs, you're already succeeding with your proficiency and expertise. High DCs will usually be unaffected by this ability unless you have expertise in that skill, so it's that mid-range that really benefits. Not having the numbers, since Matt generally hides the DC of his skill checks, unlike some DMs, just based on my impressions after hundreds of hours of Critical Role watched, I feel like Matt tends to stick to high DCs in Tier 3 and 4, so I'm going to forego this ability and the extra D6 to sneak attack to multiclass out of Rogue. I know the Nott Veth transformation happened in the middle of level 11, but I think for story and power reasons, 11 is a good point to move over into Wizard. As Caleb develops the Transmogrification spell with the assistance of Essek and Nott, this would be the perfect time for her to really delve deeper into the ways of the Wizard. There isn't much left for a Rogue past 10, Reliable Talent that we just went over, some additional sneak attack dice, the OK Versatile Trickster feature, and 3rd level spells, but with 6 levels in Wizard, Veth will have access to even more 3rd level spells, albeit 2 levels later, but plenty of other 1st and 2nd level spells along with some potentially powerful Wizard subclass abilities. With 6 levels in Wizard, Nott now fully returned to her original Veth form, will get 16 new spells, the excellent Arcane Recovery to get back 3 levels of spell slots on a short rest, an ASI or feat, and an Arcane Tradition with another subclass feature at Wizard 6, character level 16. So which subclass should she take? Unfortunately, with only 1 level in Wizard, we don't know what Sam had in mind for this pick. I really like Chronergy or Divination from a pure power standpoint, but if Sam refused to use the Halfling's best racial feature, Lucky, to reroll 1s, except that one time, then I cannot imagine any way that Sam would use Chronal Shift or Portent to force rerolls or pre-rolled dice on others. Maybe I'm wrong here, and with Essex so close to the party, Sam, Matt, and Liam could have easily RP'd away for Veth to take the Chronergy subclass. What I believe to be the strongest pick for Veth, however, is likely the War Magic Tradition. The level 2 subclass feature is very strong, even at high tier play. Tactical Wit allows you to add your Intelligence mod to your Initiative score, something Chronergists also get. Arcane Deflection is probably not as powerful as Chronal Shift or Portent, but it is very powerful. Using your reaction to get +4 to a saving throw or a +2 to your armor class is excellent, especially when the downside of only being able to cast a cantrip on your next turn is completely nullified because Veth will almost certainly use her crossbow rather than cast a spell that turn. For intelligence-based martial characters, War Mage is a very strong wizard dip. Now the level 6 subclass feature Power Surge is not particularly good and doesn't work well with a primarily martial character. Because of that, if I was to go with War Magic, I would go back to Rogue for an 11th level at level 16 for reliable talent and the extra d6 to sneak attack. But considering story, Sam's preferences, and power, the pick I'm going to highlight for subclass is the School of Transmutation. I mean, this one just makes sense. The spell that brought Veth back to her original form was a transmutation spell, Caleb was a transmutation wizard, and although the level 2 subclass feature Minor Alchemy isn't particularly strong, it's thematically perfect as Veth is an alchemist who learned from her husband Yeza, an experienced alchemist who runs the Bernardo Apothecary. The level 6 feature Transmuter Stone is quite strong. Caleb used this stone throughout his adventuring career, and for the final battles at level 16, Veth could make good use of this ability, which can provide proficiency in Constitution saving throws, and with the level 4 Wizard ASI or feat, Veth will take Resilient Wisdom, which rounds off Wisdom at 12 and provides proficiency in Wisdom saves, just as Sam did in campaign. So at level 16, Veth has proficiency in the 3 most important saving throws in the game: Dexterity through Rogue, Constitution through Wizard's Transmuter Stone, and Wisdom through the Resilient feat. We're sacrificing a bit of offense to the tune of 3d6 sneak attack damage for much better defense because of additional saving throw proficiencies and added wizard spells like Absorb Elements, Featherfall, used 15 times in campaign, Fog Cloud and Shield at level 1, Levitate, Mirror Image, Misty Step, Rope Trick, and Vortex Warp at level 2, and Counterspell, Dispel Magic, Hypnotic Pattern, a spell Veth used 6 times in campaign, Intellect Fortress, used 3 times, Phantom Steed, Sleet Storm, and many others at level 3 and below. So how do the builds compare? Well, despite the moderate dip in DPR, the build itself is much stronger because of the improved defense, the improved utility, and much better control options through the addition of all the new wizard spells, many of which are still functional at tier 3 and 4 play. If you take anything from this build, it's that DPR is not a single number that summarizes the power of a character. All it does is estimate the amount of damage a character does on average. And this game is about much more than damage. Defense, control, and utility are all extremely and perhaps even more powerful factors to the game. That doesn't mean DPR is useless or even bad, it's just not a single metric for character power. But perhaps that's a video for another day. Thanks folks, see you back here next time.